Welcome back to 30 Millionaire Stories, where we share real-life tales that move the heart, where silent compassion becomes the guiding light through the darkest days. Have you ever felt the world so heavy that what you needed wasn't someone to lift your body, but to lift your spirit? Not with strength, but with presence, with a listening gaze, or with a gentle gesture that asks for nothing in return. Sometimes, just a stranger pausing, bending down and saying, "I'm here if you need me," is enough to change everything. If you believe a moment of kindness can soothe the deepest wounds, hit like, subscribe, and join us as we step into today's story. In a small bakery in Asheville, a waitress did more than serve coffee. She carried a boy and the shattered dreams of a millionaire father. This is their story. The warm, golden light spilling from the low-hanging lamps at Maple Grove Bakery fell onto the wooden floor. It reflected the unhurried movements of a Saturday morning. In the hushed space, the hiss of the espresso machine, the soft clink of porcelain against saucer, and familiar greetings rose and fell like the steady breath of a place beloved by its regulars. At a corner table, Ethan Caldwell sat across from his 7-year-old son, Liam. Though he wore a meticulously tailored silk shirt and polished leather shoes, he seemed out of place among the simple surroundings. Yet it did not concern him. His gaze remained fixed on the child before him. The boy sat motionless, arms wrapped tightly around a now cold grilled cheese sandwich, as if it were the only anchor to this world. Liam has mild cerebral palsy. He can walk, but only a few steps before his tired body rebels against the effort. Most of the time he chooses to remain seated, observing, drawing into himself, as though searching for a small corner in which to feel safe. Ethan had done everything a wealthy father could do, hiring specialists, taking him to the finest rehabilitation centers, investing in the best therapies. Yet he had never discovered how to truly reach his son, not for lack of love, but because of an invisible fear. Fear of touching him, fear of doing it wrong, fear of causing him more harm. Behind the counter, Clara Bennett, the new waitress, on the job less than a month, watched in silence. She did not need Liam's diagnosis or medical records to recognize that every small motion was a struggle. Having cared for her uncle through years of Parkinson's, she understood the look in the eyes of someone fighting for what others take for granted. She had noticed the way Liam's fingers would grip the edge of the table when he felt anxious or attempted to stand. It wasn't obvious, but it was enough to reveal his effort. When Ethan signaled for the check, he did not need words. He merely nodded toward Clara and gestured toward the back door, where a gentle ramp made exit easier for Liam. He always chose that route to spare his son the stairs. But this time, Liam lifted his head, eyes shining with something both fragile and resolute. In a voice so soft it was almost inaudible, he said he wanted to walk on his own. Ethan paused. His eyes lingered on those slender legs, then shifted to his son's face. He did not speak. He only nodded. Liam eased himself off the chair and placed his first foot on the floor. His steps were slow, deliberate, as if each lift was a battle. Ethan followed close behind, close enough to intervene if necessary, but far enough to preserve the independence Liam was striving for. No one in the bakery spoke, yet several patrons watched without realizing it. Just before reaching the small step leading to the back patio, Liam stumbled. He did not fall, only faltered, but it was enough to seize Ethan's heart. He lifted a foot to step forward, yet stopped when another figure moved swiftly into place. Clara did not hurry. She approached and knelt beside Liam. She did not touch him, nor speak for a moment. Her face was level with his, her expression gentle, offering safety more than assistance. She did not reach to pull him upright. Instead, she sat calmly, waiting for him to decide whether he needed help. Liam looked at her, and strangely, did not pull back. In his eyes was stillness, yet no longer the hesitation that had plagued him before. She lowered herself slightly, extending a hand to his back without force, without rush. When she saw him give a small nod, she carefully lifted him onto her back, each movement tender, as if fearing to disturb something delicate that he had just fought to preserve. Clara carried Liam across the narrow aisle to the back patio. The boy rested his head on her shoulder and relaxed in a way he had never done before, as if he had finally found someone he could trust. Ethan halted. He did not follow. His arms fell to his sides as he watched those two small forms recede toward the patio. He spoke no words. None were needed. In that moment, he understood that the deepest connections often arise from the simplest acts, and that sometimes the person who helps your child take a step is not the one with credentials or expertise, but the one patient enough to wait for a nod. That moment, when Ethan stood silently by the window watching his son rest his head on a stranger's shoulder with an unexpected peace, left him with an indescribable feeling. For years, Ethan had pursued progress through charts, through treatment sessions, through regular clinical evaluations. Yet the way Liam gently closed his eyes, let his shoulders relax against Clara's back, a bakery server they had only met that morning, revealed something no expensive therapy ever could: the safety his son could actually feel. A week later, Ethan returned to the bakery, not for breakfast, nor for his routine father-son visit. He entered quietly, paused before the counter where Clara was drying a glass, and without preamble or lengthy explanation, handed her a business card. In that brief exchange, his eyes held both hesitation and hope, an expression rarely seen on a man accustomed to power and decisiveness. He did not invite her to do household chores, nor to replace a caregiver. He simply asked for her presence, to be with Liam, not for any grand purpose, but to be there. Clara froze for a moment. The request was not in any job description she had ever heard. Yet she recognized in that father's gaze no hint of obligation, only a sincere plea. And she nodded, without asking a single question. From that Saturday afternoon on, Clara came to the Caldwell estate in suburban Asheville on a regular basis. No fanfare. She carried nothing but a small backpack, a cotton t-shirt, and simple jeans. The Caldwell mansion, its modern architecture, its tall windows overlooking distant mountains, could overwhelm anyone. But to Clara, it was not a showcase of luxury. It was simply Liam's home, and that alone was enough to keep her from feeling out of place. She never tried to alter the boy's routines, nor pressured him to move beyond his limits. Whenever she spoke with Liam, she knelt, so he would not have to look up. Whenever she offered help, she extended a hand, without touching him, letting him decide if he wanted assistance. And if he did, Liam chose how: to be guided, to be carried, or to simply sit in companionable silence. They blew soap bubbles in the courtyard. The bubbles drifted upward, then burst mid-air, prompting soft laughter from Liam. Clara taught him to count his breaths whenever his legs quivered with panic. As they walked along the stone path toward the old oak tree at the garden's edge, she carried him on her back, narrating small stories about fragile birds that learn to fly into the wind, about a lone rock in a rushing stream that remains in place because it knows how to stand firm. Those tales, simple enough for children, gave Liam a sense that he was not alone in his silent battle. The boy began to change. Small shifts, but unmistakable. Even Ethan could not fail to notice. Liam smiled more, greeted Clara at the door each time she arrived, eyes shining with anticipation. He no longer waited to be lifted or guided. He reached out to her, an unspoken trust. The experience of being chosen, not compelled, was one he had never before known. One afternoon, as Clara carried Liam across the long stretch of grass where wooden benches dotted the shade, the boy whispered into her ear in a slow, clear voice, "When you carry me, I don't feel heavy anymore." Those words made her pause, not from surprise, but because in that moment, all her own weariness vanished. Daytime work, the absence of family, daily responsibilities, all felt suddenly weightless. Clara smiled, offered no reply. Yet deep inside, she understood that she was not simply helping a boy learn to stand. Liam was teaching her how to slow down, to listen more, and to believe that sometimes a healing journey requires no words, no complicated methods, just someone truly present at exactly the right moment. From the leather chair beside his desk, Ethan looked through the wide window. Below, the familiar scene unfolded in the quiet backyard. Clara gently stooping so Liam could slip his arms around her neck. Then she slowly carried him along the stone path. She said nothing. She only glanced back from time to time to ensure he remained comfortable. Liam gripped her shoulders with his thin arms, yet his face was curiously relaxed. His eyes shone as if he were seeing a world without fear for the first time. Ethan remained motionless, but inside a storm raged. He could not deny what he witnessed each week. His own son was changing, not because of a famed doctor, nor an expensive rehabilitation program, but because of a young woman without a therapy degree, carrying no treatment plans or charts, simply by being present. And somehow, that simple presence made Liam laugh more, speak more, open up without pressure. Ethan felt gratitude. Yet, alongside it, another emotion he had tried to ignore for days surfaced: jealousy. Not of Clara, but of his own son, who found safety in someone else's arms rather than his own. The realization struck him. Despite doing everything possible, he had failed. He had built a life to shield his son from pain, yet he had never heard that laughter, never witnessed that brightening gaze. One evening, as Clara carried Liam from the garden inside, the boy rested his head on her shoulder, and in an unconscious moment said she carried him like his mother used to. That brief remark echoed in Ethan's mind like a bell dropping into a deep well. He could not blame Liam. The boy was merely speaking the truth. But that truth cut deeply, striking the emptiness Ethan had never dared confront. Amelia, his wife, whom he had loved above all, had left this world 3 years earlier, after a prolonged battle with cancer. Since her passing, Ethan had retreated, erecting walls of work and duty. He loved his son, but did not know how to be close without feeling clumsy in his efforts. Now, hearing Liam mention his mother while in another's arms, Ethan realized some voids cannot be filled with money or logic. And the fear of being replaced arose, not as father, but in the only role he had left, the person Liam could trust. Ethan said nothing to Clara. He did not mention that remark. He shared his feelings with no one. Instead, he silently made a decision, coldly, swiftly, as he would in any major business deal. He instructed the butler to limit Clara's visits to 3 hours per week, every interaction between her and Liam to be monitored by camera, without exception. No conversations before or after, no explanations given. The following Saturday, Clara arrived as usual, yet the gate opened more slowly than before. The butler's gaze was sterner. No friendly greeting, no smile. The mansion's interior felt unnaturally silent. Still, Clara entered, carrying her gentle smile. Still kneeling as always to ask Liam if he wanted to be carried. He nodded, but his eyes sank, a sign he sensed the change, though no one spoke it aloud. They went out to the garden as they always did, walked the stone path, played the counting steps game, blew soap bubbles. But this time the bubbles did not drift as far as before, not because of the wind, but because an invisible distance was growing between them and the world around. Clara felt the wariness in every glance from the surveillance room's windows. She knew nothing was quite the same. All the joy, though still present, seemed placed inside a transparent cage, where a single furrowed brow could shatter it. Clara asked no questions. She did not wish to turn her presence into a burden. Yet from the moment she stepped beyond that gate, her calm had vanished. She felt no anger. She understood. But the ache of disappointment was real. For when you pour your heart into someone's world, you cannot avoid the hurt when that world's door slowly closes without explanation. As for Ethan, from behind the glass of his second-floor office, he continued to watch in silence. He saw the change in his son's expression. He saw the silence in Clara's every movement. He knew deep down his decision had not granted him peace, only solitude. Yet he remained silent, because sometimes people choose loneliness rather than admit they were wrong. Dear viewers, take a moment to relax or sip a glass of water, and then stay tuned for the surprising developments ahead. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always wonderful to see people joining us from all over the world. Comment 1 if you find this story moving, so we can continue bringing you more heartfelt tales. Clara attended the gala as Liam's personal aide, a new title Ethan had assigned after reducing her role within the household. She wore a simple dress and stood tucked behind a row of trees, blending into the background, yet her gaze never left the boy. When she noticed Liam shrinking inward, Clara stepped forward and knelt beside him. She whispered something that eased the tension in his face. She spoke of stars, of a rare constellation visible only to those who sit very still. Liam listened intently, his eyes calming amid the chaos of an unfamiliar soiree. Before long, Liam said he wished to return to his room. Clara nodded. Without waiting for permission, she bent down, allowing him to loop his arms around her neck, then gently carried him away from the party. The crowd parted to create a narrow path, though curious glances still followed them. Along the way, Clara's foot caught on a loose paving stone, causing her to falter. Instinctively, she wrapped her arms tightly around Liam and pivoted to shield him with her body. Though she did not fall, the moment seized Clara's heart. Yet she steadied herself and continued forward as if nothing had happened. The incident might have ended there had a guest not lifted a phone at that precise instant. A photograph captured Clara bearing Liam on her back, beads of sweat dotting her forehead, her face flushed by heat and tension. Liam clung to her shoulders, eyes softly closed in serenity, as though the surrounding din had ceased to exist. The image spread swiftly across social media, accompanied by a sensational headline: "Millionaire abandons disabled son to waitress at lavish gala." When the photo appeared in news feeds, Ethan was incensed. Not because he believed it, but because he felt insulted, misrepresented in the public eye. He did not call Clara to inquire, nor did he seek context or explanation. He simply sent a brief email through management. As of next week, Clara need not return. No reasons were given. There was not even a farewell. Clara received the notice one late afternoon in her modest boarding room. She was neither surprised nor in tears. After a moment of silence, she penned a brief note on a scrap of paper, folded it, and entrusted it to the butler for delivery to Ethan. No accusations, no defense, only a heartfelt line. Liam does not need someone to carry him forever. He only needs someone willing to bend down when he is tired. That night, Ethan remained in his study long after the household had fallen silent. He read the note once, then folded it and set it atop his desk. The mansion felt eerily quiet. No Liam's laughter in the garden, no Clara's stories drifting from the balcony. Silence clung to each wall and staircase. Ethan could not pinpoint what made him feel so suffocated. Perhaps the small note, perhaps the widening gap between him and his son. A few days later, one afternoon, Ethan passed through the living room and unconsciously paused at the window. Below, Liam sat alone on the lawn, clutching the worn, stuffed bunny his mother once gave him. The boy spoke softly to himself, voice trembling just enough for his own ears. If Clara were still here, she would carry me longer. That moment shattered Ethan. He stood motionless, feeling something break inside the fortress he had built around his heart. Not anger, not shame at public criticism, but guilt toward his son. For he had not only driven Clara away, but had also pushed Liam back into the loneliness he had struggled to escape. He realized the boy's sorrow stemmed not from losing someone to carry him, but from losing someone truly willing to bend down beside him when he needed it. And for the first time in years, Ethan understood he was no longer the strongest person in that house. Ethan did not sleep that night. His entire body felt as though it were gripped by an invisible force, not from work, nor from public scrutiny, but from the gaze and whispered words of his own son. Unspoken questions echoed endlessly in his mind. Why had he driven Clara away? Why had he allowed a moment's emotion to shatter the one gift his son had ever truly known? At dawn, instead of heading to his office as usual, he drove out of the city toward Asheville's suburbs. He spoke to no one, made no plans. He simply went, compelled by a feeling that he could no longer avoid. The place he arrived at was neither luxurious nor prominent. It was a small community therapy center called Bright Path Center, tucked into an aging neighborhood. Faded brick walls, a weathered sign warped by time. Yet inside, children's laughter and calls rang out vividly. Ethan stepped slowly through the gate. Everything was unpretentious, yet brimming with life. Volunteers darted back and forth, catching children with disabilities, teaching them to stack blocks, to sing, to paint. No one recognized him, the man once gracing the cover of Forbes. Here, reputation meant nothing. He paused when he spotted Clara. She knelt beside a little girl, helping her draw a house with chalk on the pavement. Her hair was hastily tied back, a few strands escaping at her neck, a faded gray t-shirt, rolled-cuff jeans, worn shoes. Yet her smile was gentle, unforced, not for show, but because she truly felt it. That smile made Ethan's heart ache, not with guilt, but because, for the first time, he grasped the difference between striving to give and truly being present. He did not call her name. He did not intrude upon her work. Instead, he wandered past the playground and stopped beside a boy, stacking small wooden blocks. His hair was tousled, suspicion lingered in his eyes, as if he were used to being overlooked by adults. Ethan sat down. His hand trembled slightly as his voice rose softly. "May I carry you?" The boy regarded him for a moment, then nodded. Ethan bent, wrapped his arms around the small frame, and hoisted him onto his back. It was neither heavy nor difficult, but it made his heart constrict. The boy's arms circled Ethan's neck. His head rested lightly on Ethan's shoulder. The sensation was achingly familiar, but also the very thing he had feared confronting. All those years he had avoided carrying Liam. He worried that if he slipped, if he held him incorrectly, if he caused him to fall, he would never forgive himself. And in that fear, he had let others carry his son. Let others fill the space he ought to have occupied. When he turned his head, his eyes met Clara's. She had seen it all. She remained in place, yet her gaze was no longer distant, no longer pained. Simply the silence of one who had hoped, who had been disappointed, and now waited for an answer louder than any action. Ethan tightened his hold on the boy's shoulders, stood, and walked slowly toward her. He offered no excuse. He circled no words. He spoke in a voice rough with restraint. He had never carried Liam without fear. Fear that he would not be steady enough. Fear of doing it wrong. And above all, fear of seeing his son regard him as someone unworthy of his trust. He said that he needed someone to teach him how to carry without letting go too soon. Clara did not reply at once. She simply looked at him, long and steadily, as if weighing not his words, but whether the change within him ran deep enough to merit a second chance. Then she nodded, not for who he was as Ethan Caldwell, not for his fame or status, but because the man before her was learning to listen, learning to bend down, not to control, but to understand. From that day on, Clara returned to the Caldwell estate, but no longer as an employee. She returned as a teacher, not of theory, but of patience. She taught Ethan how to kneel without making others feel small. She taught him to listen to Liam, not only with his ears, but with his eyes, and with quiet presence. She taught him that sometimes you need do nothing at all, only to be there. Ethan did not change in a day, but step by step, he began to learn again. To learn fatherhood not by preparing everything perfectly, but by refusing to withdraw when situations grew difficult. And Liam, with a lighter expression, began to allow his father to carry him, not out of necessity but out of trust. And sometimes that alone is enough to begin again a journey once fractured. That autumn, Bright Path Center held a celebration. The auditorium was packed with parents, children, and volunteers. A hand-painted banner hung above the stage, carrying each other through every journey. Center stage, Liam sat on a wooden chair, gripping the microphone with trembling hands. He wore a slightly wrinkled dress shirt, yet his eyes shone with courageous light. Ethan stood behind the curtain, his heart pounded with pride. Clara stood nearby, her hands clasped, her eyes sparkling. Liam cleared his throat. His voice was soft but resonant. When I was little, I feared raising my hand to ask for a lift. I thought that if I grew tired, everyone would leave me behind. The room fell silent. But now I know. If I raise my hand, someone will always carry me, not just with their arms, but with their heart. Applause broke out, first gentle, then thunderous. Ethan walked onto the stage without hesitation. He bent down and lifted Liam onto his back. This time, he felt no fear. Clara stepped forward. She laid a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder, not as an outsider, but as part of this healing journey. Liam rested his head on his father's shoulder. One hand gripped Ethan's collar, the other waved to the audience. As the stage lights dimmed, 30 Millionaire Stories sent this message to you. If you believe that a timely lift can uplift an entire soul, please like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs a bit of light today. Every week, we bring you stories of compassion, hope, and the power of presence. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always wonderful to see viewers from all around the world. Comment 1 if you found this story moving, so we can continue bringing you more heartfelt tales.